And we're live. Welcome to the Azure SDK Community Stand-Up, where we bring you the latest updates, insights, and discussions from the world of Azure development. In this episode, we will be talking about harnessing the potential of the Azure SDK for JavaScript. Today, my co-host Sandeep Sen and guest Matthew Podwysocki are joining us to talk about the Azure SDK for JavaScript and discuss how this powerful tool empowers developers to easily build robust applications. In today's episode, we will touch on Azure OpenAI for JavaScript and some other great topics related to the world of JavaScript. Stay with us as we dive in the world of Azure development. Now, let's talk about the agenda for today. So today, we will be talking briefly about the August releases. The main topic for today will be the Azure SDK for JavaScript with our guest, Matthew Podwysocki. I'm excited. We have a live demo and some Q&A. But before we get started, I want to introduce you to the Azure SDK PM team. So as you can see, we have PMs for languages and services. You can see Python, storage, machine learning. Rohit is here. I like to put their Twitter handle because if you're ever working with an Azure SDK, we would like to hear from you. You can always find us on social media with using those handles, and we'll be more than happy to hear from you. And at the end, I'll also show you another ways to get in contact with us. We have cognitive services. I'm the JavaScript and TypeScript PM. I'm also working with Azure Cognitive Search. We have social and engagement experience. Our PM leads are also here just in case. But conveniently today, we have the Go and Java and Event Grid and so many other services PM with us today. And I mentioned conveniently, and you'll see why in a minute. Why don't you introduce yourself? Hey, Sandeep.
Hey, I'm Sandeep. As Hector mentioned, I work with Go and Java and any other services, and you can reach out to me on the Twitter handle. I mean, formerly Twitter, now X. You can X me out, I guess, and we'll respond to your comments. And you can always reach out to GitHub handles and our GitHub SDK links, and we'll definitely answer there. And conveniently, it doesn't change the name too often.
We get really excited about the products that we work on, and it's always nice to hear from the people using it out there. We want to hear from you if you have any feedback or how you're using it. We want to learn more about that. And when I said conveniently, Sandeep, is because we're going to talk about releases, and I noticed this month has been very, very exciting for Go.
Yes, indeed. We released our key vault packages, which include administration keys and secrets in Go. So you have the full key vault experience with the client library in Go. And we also had a lot of initial betas for Go this month, a new version of Event Hub. We had a new version of monitor ingestion and OpenAI, but this OpenAI is like useful for normal AI as well, normal OpenAI as well as Azure OpenAI. So feel free to use it at both places.
That's exciting, and we're touching a little bit about OpenAI today, Azure OpenAI for JavaScript. So that must be really exciting. So without further ado, why don't we get Matthew into the stream? Hi, Matthew.
Привет. Дякую. Hello. Cześć. How are you?
Great.
Good.
Glad to hear it. Yeah, so I am glad to be here talking about all things JavaScript, as I have been a JavaScript developer since 1997. So that sets me probably older than most folks that are actually doing JavaScript today. As people will notice from my formerly known as Twitter handle and everything else, most of my social medias has this particular hat. So yes, I still have it and I still wear it occasionally. But yeah, I've been working with JavaScript pretty much since then, and it's then creating libraries such as RxJS back in 2010 to 2012 timeframe. And really, the landscape has just changed so much from then till now, and it's an interesting seesaw back and forth between how much JavaScript we write, how much we rely on our servers and everything else. So it's a very interesting topic for sure.
Definitely. I've been in the JavaScript world not that long ago, and I've seen so many changes in the last 8 years. I can't imagine what you've experienced. And now having all this support with JavaScript for OpenAI and so many other things, this is very exciting times. Why don't we talk a little bit about how JavaScript SDK works? Sandeep, you want to give us a quick.
Yeah, so like when you go to our JavaScript SDK repo, which is conveniently running underneath as a banner, so you'll find a monorepo, and that monorepo is called Azure SDK for JS. Inside that, you'll find a directory called SDK. And inside that SDK, you'll conveniently find your service name. For example, storage. Storage is a service we offer. And inside that storage directory, you'll find something called arm hyphen your service name, maybe this case arm hyphen storage. So this arm is the management library. You can create and destroy and manage resources on Azure related to this service using this library. Again, fully TypeScript and JavaScript compliant. You don't have to use something else like Terraform or something. You can just write it in JavaScript. And next to that, on the same level, you'll find the service directory. This service directory is our offering for that service. Like in storage, we have storage blobs, we have storage files, we have storage queues. So for example, this service would be this directory would be named something like storage blobs. And inside that directory, you'll find source directory, which is again the source code for the library, client library. And then you'll also find samples dev. These are atomic samples, standalone atomic samples, showing you one particular thing. Like it can be a sample about upload, it can be a sample about download and whatnot. And then there is a samples directory. Inside that samples directory is a fully runnable app. You can just npm run that app. So in this way, you can navigate through our folder structure and pretty much get everything you want. And we also recommend you to visit our documentation. But if you choose not to, we still have samples. It's up to you how you look at our stuff. And like enough talking about this, I'd like Matthew to just take over and show us some cool stuff.
Sure. So yeah, it's very cool that you mentioned that, especially when we're talking about samples. We also talk about our little cookbooks that we have for general integrations. For example, if you wanted to integrate, say, Azure Speech with Chat GPT, for example, and with Azure OpenAI, we've got samples coming up for a lot of those kinds of things. So it's really kind of cool that we are, obviously having the pointed samples that we have today, but also, the larger things that we want to do. For example, to show how a lot of these services work well together, or even the web platform itself and how well that works with our services. So yeah, you mentioned OpenAI, and that's a really good place to get started. So why don't we just dive into some code here? So to do that, I'm going to share my screen, and we are going to take a look at some Visual Studio code here. So let me know if you see everything here. And if
Yep.
so What we can do is we publish a library specifically. If you go onto npm, we publish it through the Azure prefix here, so Azure OpenAI, for example. And this particular example, what we're going to do is we're going to listen for things posted on this particular route for some JSON. And what we're going to do is we're going to then create an OpenAI client. And in this particular case, we're using Azure OpenAI because we're using an Azure OpenAI deployment and an endpoint. However, if you want to use just normal OpenAI, you can also do that through the same client. And as you can see here, there are different ways about instantiating it if you just want to use regular OpenAI. We have documentation on how to do so. So that's kind of neat. So in this particular case, what we're going to do is we're going to list the completions, meaning we are going to take whatever comes from the client, and we're going to stream that out to the customer on their platform of choice. Whatever they give us, we give back as a completion. So in this particular case, what we get back from OpenAI is an async iterable. And so if you're familiar with iterables and async iterables, it's a way for us to incrementally pull data as we're able to from the underlying source. So in this particular case here, we're pulling it directly from Azure OpenAI. So every time that we call next, we're getting more and more data. And when we get that, we can go through the choices and we can write out the content. And since we're dealing with node streams here, we're being good citizens and making sure that we're not overloading the server. So let's go and look at how we would actually use that. So we could use it in a web front end if we want to, or you could even just do a plain old curl. And so here I can ask to write me two numbers, to add two numbers in TypeScript directly. And what's cool about that is that it comes back in a streaming fashion. So as you can see, it didn't rate all of the stuff at once. It was a streaming way of doing that. And that's really kind of cool, is the fact that you're not waiting for the server infinitely. You're getting incremental data. And that, to me, is absolutely huge. So that's really, really cool that we can start to ask a number of questions. We can have all of this data streamed directly to you. Now,
And this is a simple Express app, right?
yeah, correct.
Express.js app.
Yep.
Nothing special to it.
Nothing special. And like I said, is that we're just doing some writing directly to the output stream. Now we're looking at ways of we can do better integration with Node and web streams, and that's coming soon. But as we were showing, we're only on beta 4 right now, which just means we're learning and we're gathering feedback from you folks out there about how you want to interact with OpenAI. So what was really kind of cool about this exercise is, like I said, is that we have OpenAI client and we can pull in everything here. But what's also very interesting is we have what we call a modular approach. And that modular approach is so that you only bring in what you absolutely need. So for in this case here, we have everything listed off the client. So you can do client dot and see whatever operations that you can do. But what if I want to be a little bit more size conscious about what I'm bringing in, or I want to have a smaller bundle size, or so on and so forth? Well, we have are starting to publish those in npm as well. And we'll talk about the benefits of doing so shortly. But what's really kind of neat is the fact that now I can pull in individual methods that I want, as long as I can create my OpenAI here. And specifically, I can call list chat completions. And what's different about that is I'm only pulling in the things that I really, really need at this point. So I can then take chat completions and pass in this context that I created over here. It's the same code. It's all working in the same way. It's just now that tree shaking and everything else with your bundler will be able to strip off everything it doesn't need, and it will be able to create much, much more compelling and much smaller things. So I'm going to, before I jump out of this particular part, I wanted to show just a little bit on how you can use this in such a way that really makes for a really interesting demo. So there's this great little starter kit out there that was created here called Create Svelte Chat GPT. And this is a way that it uses Vercel's um, OpenAI offerings directly. But I thought it was an interesting challenge. Maybe I could do the same thing with ours, for example, with our offering to get streaming working directly with this. So I have a simple little fork of this using the same underlying technology of Svelte and Tailwind, but using our SDK on the back end. And so I can write something like hi, and sure enough, it comes back as a neat result. So I can say add two numbers together in TypeScript in an add function. And I can write that. And what it'll do is it sure enough does that. And what's cool is it's showing you that it's doing it in a streaming fashion and that it does the code fencing properly and so on and so forth. So it's really kind of a neat little example. And so thank you very much for the original author for this. But it does give us additional inspiration as to what we can make available to customers, say if they are React users or if they are using Angular or anything else, or Vue. I don't want to leave anyone out here because there are so many frameworks. Just name a day, and there's a new framework. So that's really, really cool. But I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into the size differences because that I think is really, really key when it comes to how we deal with JavaScript and so forth. Because really, the JavaScript team here on the Azure SDK wants you to do more with less code, smaller bundle sizes, faster performance is one of our biggest goals. So to do that, we have been focusing a lot of our efforts on this modular development that I was showing here. So going back to this quick example here, sure enough, I am using the exact same kinds of things in the Svelte app as I was doing before. So just to let you know, there's no smoke and mirrors and everything else. In fact, that I'm just creating a really cool stream from the list completions that we have from before. So let's go into a little bit into some of the more messy details, as it were. So in here, I can Azure Notification Hubs is one of those technologies that we have been working on in terms of kind of pushing the envelope as to what we can ship in terms of modular development. So in the case here, we can create a client and we can send a push notification. And as you can see, we follow the same kind of pattern that we showed before from the new client and then the method off of that. But what's interesting is that we can show off the same kinds of things here using modular development, where we can pull in some things here. Let's pull in the new stuff because I want to kind of show off what we're able to do here. So we can say we're going to bring in some things from models, for example, and we're going to expose certain things from API. So API is where you're going to be able to create your client contexts that you're going to pass around, but also for each individual method that you want. There are some that'll say, oh, that's not as discoverable and so on and so forth. But the reality is that if you go in there and use the IntelliSense from, say, VS Code, it already tells you here when you're importing what kind of operations are available from the API. So it's a really good developer experience. So you're not really left hanging as to what's available to you. So in this particular case, we're just going to send a notification and wait for a response. But that's not the really interesting part. The really interesting part, though, is how different are the bundle sizes between what we can provide as from this uh, regular client-based classical design with classes and everything else to a much more modular design. And we can do that. We have a little thing here where we can say npm run build. And what it'll do is it will show us exactly how much it saved us. And this is huge because what we're talking about here is we're talking about taking something down from 274 down to 161 of and then 34 KB gzip. So we're talking a huge deal in terms of how much we're able to save the developers in terms of what they want for smaller footprints, or to be able to have as much or as little functionality as they need. That to me is absolutely huge.
And this is available for most of our libraries right now, all these modules?
We are rolling this out incrementally, but yes, we are going to start doing this relatively soon for more modules. But OpenAI is certainly one of those that is doing it, but also notification hubs, and we're starting to ship more of these as time goes along. So what we're trying to do is get the feedback from the community on what they think of these designs, but also to kind of realize that we're pushing the envelope to giving them a smaller experience, a more pointed experience, and to be able to ship less code and do more things.
I mean,
And if I'm not mistaken, the difference between the normal classical approach and this one is just the imports,
Yeah.
nothing
Yep.
much. Yeah.
Nothing else different except that it allows the bundlers to do tree shaking where things that are not being used can easily be removed from the
Discarded.
program, so that we can focus on the code that they do need.
I mean, this one, at least in this particular case, is around 40%. I'll take it.
Yes,
exciting.
and yeah, in the cases of going from a previous version to this version, yeah, we're able to save developers 40%, and we're looking at 40 to 41%, and that's, to me, is huge. And we can start to really focus on how we can help the developers even more with these sorts of things in terms of tree shaking, in terms of getting only the pieces that they need, and being cognizant of development sizes and so forth.
So
Oh,
you literally are focusing and doing more with less.
exactly. Yes, and that was kind of one of the main concepts that was drilled into to a lot of us, is do more with less, and this is absolutely true in this case. And so that also helps for things like not only the browser, but obviously for your web app, for your Electron apps, or your React Native apps and those sorts of things, to cut down on the amount that you ship with there, because we on the on a lot of these libraries do support React Native, for example. And through the npm compatibility modes, we are also working with Bun and with Deno to make sure that we can run those libraries as well. So it's really kind of cool that we are able to run pretty much to the promise of JavaScript, is to be able to run anywhere. And that's the beauty of JavaScript. And if we can allow the developers to do more with less, that's great. Smaller bundle sizes, smaller app sizes, everything.
Not only that, but it's like we're working in so many things that were not available in JavaScript. You don't have to go to Python anymore. You can do it in JavaScript too, right?
Yes, and that's really is one of the key differences. Is about what makes Azure interesting and Azure SDKs interesting is the fact that when we introduce an SDK, it's being brought for Java, it's being brought for .NET, it's being brought for Python, and it's being brought for JavaScript. They might have their own opinions on how those look, obviously, but it's fundamentally still, it will feel like JavaScript. It will feel like you're at home with JavaScript. It'll feel at home with Python, etc. But yet it will give you the full access to the particular service that you're using.
Yeah. So our SDKs pretty much are on par. So anything you can do with Java or .NET, you can do it with JavaScript and Python as well. That also includes provisioning the resources through our management libraries as well as interacting with any service. So
Yep.
like if you are a JavaScript developer, you definitely don't need to learn any other language to interact with Azure. You can pretty much do everything on JavaScript.
Yep. Yeah, and it is funny is people will look at Microsoft. Oh, we're a .NET. We're all a .NET company. Well, not necessarily. In the fact that we are, pushing the envelope with JavaScript. We are doing a lot of stuff with Java, and working with OpenAI and Python. So yeah, there's a lot of really cool things that we're being able to do, and making sure that all of these languages have, or runtimes have, the best experience possible for that particular service.
And I also want to point out to our viewers that we do not even enforce Windows. See, Matthew is on a Mac,
Yep.
and so am I, and Hector.
I'm also in a Mac.
So, yeah, so we are a open organization, and we support all languages and all development modes.
That's one of the things that I wanted to mention when I was introducing the Azure SDK PM team is we're always open to hear from people, and we don't care what are you working on, but we want to get more feedback because we are literally invested. We do a lot of open source, of course, right? We're really interested in doing more, and we want to hear more feedback. Well, this was pretty cool, Matthew. Do you have something else to talk to us about, or do you have any questions, Sandeep?
No, I don't have any questions.
Yeah. So, like I said, is we're doing some really cool things here, and we're starting to start to ship out these smaller libraries and what we're calling REST level clients, and being able to do a lot more with a lot less code in very lightweight wrappers, so that you get to have the full advantage of the SDK and all of its things that it's able to do, but in much smaller packages. So I think people will be hopefully pretty impressed with the fact that they can start to do a lot more with services they would have never thought would be exposed through JavaScript.
Yeah, I would suggest for people to follow that handle, the Azure SDK, on Twitter, so you can be up to date to what's happening. But also, you can go to the Azure SDK blog and hear what's happening in there. But yeah, well, thank you so much. Let's move into Q&A just in case somebody has a question. Well, we already don't have a question for now.
We don't have a question today, but this is how you can reach out to us. You can look at releases for all our latest releases, and it's in a table format. You can click and find all documentation and search for a service you're looking for. You can reach out to our GitHub, links to all our GitHub repos. You can raise issues there, and we'll definitely take a look at it. We have Twitter, we have X, formerly Twitter, and we have a blog. You can read blogs, and you can even reach out to us on Stack Overflow on the Azure Collective. But I would recommend, if you have a specific issue you're dealing with, reach us out on GitHub, because we are more focused on GitHub rather than Stack Overflow. And for all our AI samples, I know AI is hot right now. So if you want to see what's happening with AI, how to use Azure AI or OpenAI, you can just use the Akka link for AZ AI.
The cookbook and the samples in there are really cool. So go
Yeah.
play with them, do other things. And well, thank you so much. And before we leave, I would like to bring Haley. She's going to talk to us about something very cool for next month.
What's up? Thank you so much, Hector. I usually sit in the background in these, so it's cool to jump on screen and say hi to everyone. Next month on September 7th, we are having Azure Developers Python Day. And so if you go to this link below, you can register. Of course, it is free, like all of our Azure Developers content. It's going to be a full day of virtual conference. We're going to go through Python from all topics, from AI, developer productivity, serverless, data services. And so there's going to be a lot of great content. It's free. Please register, and we'll get that information to you.
That's
and
awesome.
and is there a like minimum requirement, or I can just jump into this and register and join in?
You can just jump in and register. We'll have content all across the board, from beginner to more advanced, and resources and things to help you get started.
That's exciting,
Cool.
actually. And guess what? The following Thursday, on the 14th, this channel, we're going to be talking about Python. We're going to have our own little Python day ourselves, too. We're going to be talking about the Azure SDK for Python. We have an amazing show prepared for that one. So I guess if anybody has something else to say.
I would ask Matthew, what is the one advice you would give to JavaScript devs?
Oh gosh, that's
Just
hard.
one, and
Just
small one.
one.
Yeah.
Wow. Geez. Be curious. Be
Oh, yeah.
curious with new libraries that are coming out there. Understand where they're coming from and why they're solving the particular problem that they're doing. Because it's very interesting. Is what you'll find is a lot of these things are taking on a central idea and each having a different way of describing it. And I think it's really key to understand, instead of just throwing, oh gosh, they don't understand this, is to understand why they're doing the things that they're doing, what problems they're trying to solve with it. So just be curious, dive into the code. And that's what makes open source great, is the fact that you can learn so much and be inspired so easily by just looking, being curious, asking questions. And it really keeps you motivated to learn more, to dive deeper. And maybe you find an area that they missed, for example, in their inspiration. And maybe you go off and do your own thing, or you contribute and so forth, but just be curious.
That's a great
You
advice. I'm always surprised when I see people using something that I didn't think about it, right? Like they just go and play with something. It's like, what if I do this? I want to hear from those people. I want to see what is stopping you from accomplishing those things, and being curious, and reach out to others to see how they're doing it or how they would do it. That would be great too. Yeah, I love it. All right. Well, I think that's a wrap for today. The Azure SDK Community Stand Up, 6th episode. It's on the books now. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.